this is Cam, and welcome to another episode of the Quarantine Series. I'm here with a great friend, Tim Joyce, affectionately known as TJ by the entire YMCA world. And TJ is retiring as president and CEO of the YMCA of Richmond. And it's just days away from being in full capacity to that. So TJ, tell us where you're at right now and kind of your job status.
Well, where I'm at right now is I'm sitting in what we call our sunroom. So I'm at home because of all the good stuff going on with COVID that makes it so we can't get out and go do a lot of things. But actually what I'm doing, Cam, right now is in this semi-retirement mode. I get the great distinct honor of serving as the senior advisor to the CEO. Great gig, great gig. You can give all the input you want. You have no authority anymore. But the person that the board hired, Abby Ferris-Rogers, executive vice president for us and our team for many years, was hired to fill the role. And we are basically making phone calls, Zoom calls, to leaders in the community that she already has some good relationships with, most of them, leveraging this historic transition of a new CEO to the YMCA of Greater Richmond, 167 years old. This coming year, and the first woman to lead this organization. So awesome. That is kind of what my current gig is.
You got a couple more weeks of that. That's great. Tell us, let's go back. How did you start with the Y? How many years ago has it been?
Dude, I was 16, so let's do the math. That would be 49 years ago. And I was a part-time lifeguard. So pause for a moment and think about me watching over your life in a pool. Very first paycheck I ever got in my life. Very first one, other than, getting cash for mowing yards, was from the YMCA. I was 16. But my life changed when I was 18, and I went to work at Camp Seagull. Many people know of that camp. As I like to say, it was the first time I was ever responsible for another group of human beings, which is my cabin. And the rest, they say, is history. And that began like I said, when I was 18. What does that give me? About 10 years of part-time work, 35 years of professional work. And my running story is I showed up when I was 7 years old as an after-school kid. So I've been hanging around this place probably a little bit too long.
That's good. I know I've asked you this question and we've debated some in the Y world. Is it a job or a calling? Where it's at? When did the job become a calling for you? Or when did you know?
Ken, that's a great question. I'm not sure as much as I knew as all of a sudden I realized. So it was a job at first, greatest job in the world. In 1985, when Don Cheek asked me to come be the program director at Camp Seagull, there's a name there, right? He's still alive and kicking. He's in his 90s now. But he asked me to come be the program director. Greatest job in the world. Loved it. And then somewhere along the line, I realized it was a calling. You kind of wake up and turn around and 15 years are gone, 18 years are gone, or 20 are gone. But I realized, and I used to say this a long time ago, I thank God for creating the YMCA because people with ADHD can go and make a living. You don't want me as your accountant. You don't want me as your lawyer. You definitely don't want me as your doctor. But I could do this. And so there was a natural alignment of my God-given gifts and the skills I could learn to this mission, this calling, this purpose that I'm the luckiest man in the world, bro.
Yeah.
I've got
how
to
many
do
years?
This.
How long were you in Raleigh? What was your tenure in Raleigh?
27 years professionally.
So what apprehension after 27 years, there's got to be great comfort and familiarity with that Y family there. What apprehension did you have when you were leaving for Richmond, or was there any?
Oh, absolutely. Because what I did is I gave up all of my capacity. I'd grown up in Raleigh. It was my hometown. Knew everybody. I worked with my best friends. Doug, Tracy, and I had 40 years together, beginning as counselors at Seagull, coming up through the ranks. We had rode this amazing growth curve in the triangle. As Doug once said, any blind monkey can run the YMCA here. I mean, because we're just riding the growth curve, right? So you got all that capacity. You're sitting, I'd gotten to the position following another great leader, Judy Bright, as the executive vice president. So I had the greatest job, right? I was the number 2, but didn't take the bullet.
Yeah.
That was Doug's, right?
And you're finishing that way.
And I'm finishing that way, right? And so you have all that. And trust me, man, when God started getting a hold of me and Diane and different things were happening, I'll never forget. Somebody called and said, Richmond's open. You need to take a look at it. I said, I'm not interested, right? I'm not interested. My mother had just passed away. I'd been caregiver for many, many years. And I said, no, I love, for all the reasons I said, I love it here. And they went, no, you need to pray about it. This is you. And I did. I prayed about it. And be careful what you pray for. Because my whole thing is like, okay, if this is yours, God, show me. Bring the people, bring the word, show me the footprints in the sand. You know, as I'm in the word, just show me. And he did, Cam. I like to say it. What's the term? Lord, fleece me like Gideon. Well, not only do it twice like Gideon's story, he did it a third time just to get my attention. So absolutely full of, okay, what's getting ready to happen, but knowing with absolute confidence I'd been called to Richmond. I knew one person. I knew one person in Richmond. Now I discovered two others up there that I didn't realize were there, but I knew one person. And he had caught my attention. It's almost like this burning bush. And it's been an amazing, raw, real faith walk. And I thought I had a faith walk, bro.
Yeah.
Raleigh's a great place, but the needs in the triangle compared to the historical needs in Richmond are just two different things. That God called me into service, seemingly unprepared, right? Because I'm coming out of Raleigh, but it's he just circled me and brought people around me and brought voices and gave me the strength to challenge my own thinking. And this past summer, when we had just the explosion of racial consciousness in our nation, we had a little bit of it in Richmond. We know a few things about monuments and about historical 400 years of slavery. Richmond was the largest East Coast slave port in the United States, second largest port behind New Orleans. Dude, that's a lot of history that carries forward. Who am I? I wasn't prepared for that, but God knew. And here's my last thing. And again, I told you, Cam, I give long answers to short questions. I apologize. So never in my 8 years, never did I ever question, why am I having to go through this? I'd start to go, okay, Lord, why? Wait. Oh, no, wait a minute. I know why. Because you knew what was coming and you wanted me here to do it. Now the question is, what do you want me to do and how do you want me to do it? And brother, it changes your whole perspective in ministry. It just changes everything when you know that. And that's what Diane and I believed when we stepped out 8 years ago in faith.
Yeah, that's great. You're a great leader. So let's just talk about your leadership in this, because that's what the quarantine series is about, is to help inspire and encourage people in our Y movement and around and outside the Y movement too. But what fuels you every day for a 40 plus year career? What fuels you to come in every day? Being at Mach 38, as you've said, you're a high energy guy.
It's a couple things come crashing into my mind as you say that. First off, is there anything that I can do that can lift another human spirit to help them realize that they are fearfully and wonderfully made, created by God, that he does not make junk? So many things over my time in the Y, whether it was working with my cabin of 6 and 7 year olds as I was senior counselor of cabin 1, or whether it was working in our youth programs in our branches, or starting a brand new summer day camp in Pamlico County for those kids there. Peggy McElveen had that inspirational thought, another great leader in the movement. Whether it was just trying to keep up with great leaders like yourself and Andy Calhoun and Eric Ellsworth and Tracy Howe and those guys that just set a godly bar so high. Is there anything that I could do to help just bring maybe a reflection of God's love into other human beings as we just show up? And it's not being smart, it's just showing up. The second thing that drove me, and the thing that I hope that one day I will still hear, is well done, good and faithful servant.
Well, you get that. You've been such an inspiration to me. And you don't even know the anecdotes of when we bumped into each other. You would say something to me, and it was just at the right time, really at the right time. What's your best? Do you have a best leadership moment from your career?
Gosh, it's so hard to say best. But here's one that I'll never ever forget. So it was 1996. I think it was 96. I just become the branch exec at the Carey Family YMCA, following Tracy Howe. How do you follow Tracy Howe?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you follow Tracy Howe? Because I'm just as hyper as he is, right? He did an amazing job launching that. And I hired a youth counselor. She had been with us in our programs, had done a great job, just an amazing leader at the time. And she was Jewish. And I caught flack and blowback from some of our leaders, volunteer leaders, not from staff, but volunteer leaders. But what are you doing? This is a Christian organization. And I remember telling him, I said, how in the world would anybody ever get to know the love of Christ unless they hang around those that exemplify the love of Christ? She can do the job. She's got an amazing ethos. And I stand behind the hire. Great career. She did great things. She's still with the Y. Amazing. Great leader. I went on. I got pulled to the ARC, left the branch work. But I found out about 7 or 8 years after that she came to a professing place of faith of Jesus Christ as her Lord and Savior. I didn't do it, but I had a piece of that sowing of the seed or cultivating of the plant. I didn't reap it. Somebody else had it. Probably one of the greatest leadership things I've ever been a part of.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And some people would probably look at me as going, dude, really? No. Oh yeah. Because that one's eternal, brother.
Yeah. That's that Y magic. I say, let the Y do its magic sometimes getting in there.
The pixie dust.
Yeah. You're such a great leader, but did your leadership change any during the pandemic, and maybe how?
Did yours?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're talking to you now.
What do you expect me to say on that one? Yeah, so as it turned out, I'm also a part of this program that started before the pandemic called On Principle, where I was invited for some reason to be a mentor to several 12 mentees, just in strengthening the foundations of leadership based upon Christian principles. And the book we are reading is a great book. It's called Canoeing the Mountains. And it's talking about adaptability. How are we adaptive in our times? So instead of it being this, book academic piece that we're doing, all of a sudden we're thrust into real life adaptation. How do you adapt? What are the things that you depend on? How do you navigate a constantly changing vocal world? Volatility and uncertainty and chaos. That whole thing. How do you do that? And so literally, as this pandemic hit, and you and I did something we've never had to do before, close the YMCA down. How you open it back up, you have an explosion of racial consciousness right at the exact same time. You have an economic meltdown. And all this is happening, and you're sitting on point. And you cannot just delegate any of this. You have to step up and step into it. And the journey that I committed to try to understand what my Black brothers and sisters were going through in a life that was foreign to me, because I've been raised white and I've grown up in a society that it was in my favor. Just through that compassion, just probably the biggest thing was to slow down and listen more, and sometimes take the shots. Because there was a lot of anger and hurt feelings and tears, and we created a lot of space. Megan O'Neill did a great job of just creating space with her staff, that we would have Zoom calls of just sharing. And they all seemed to begin on Friday nights at 8 o'clock and go to 11 o'clock. And I went, I'm in bed at 9 on a Friday night. What is this?
Come on.
Right? Come on, man. But it wasn't about me. And so, Cam, just through this whole thing, I would probably say from the pandemic standpoint of the COVID health crisis and economics, we slowed down in Richmond. We were thoughtful, we were prayerful, we were intentional. And we did not panic. And because of that, we navigated through really well, where so many of our brothers and sisters, were letting staff go and shutting things down. Obviously we lost our part-timers because our programs went away, but we didn't lose any full-time staff. We kept them all whole till about the 1st of June. And up to this point, we have lost maybe 50 full-timers, but only about 20 to 25 of them were because of constriction of business. The rest didn't fill positions. Dude, that's God's favor upon us, because we took it to him. We were thoughtful. We were intentional. Instead of running with our hair on fire, right? So that was an adaptive change, just to breathe, to be still, to listen, to be vulnerable, as Brene Brown talks about, just to be vulnerable in that moment. That was probably the biggest change, if anybody saw me now that knew me before.
Yeah, that's good stuff. During your career, what's the best leadership advice? Or, I know it's hard to pick the best, but what's the best leadership advice you got during your career?
The best advice that I got in my career? Golly, man. They call them TJ-isms, right? Because I never had a real one. I just borrowed and stole everybody else's. And there's so many of them. Right now, anybody who's watching this is probably filling in all the blanks. Oh, it's this one. Oh, it's this one. I would probably say as I pull back and I look at all of it, relax. God's in control.
Yeah.
Go there first. Seek first his understanding. Do not rely on your own. Relax. Breathe. That's not the way I did it for a long time.
Well, that's hard. That's hard to do. We're drivers and we're in charge sometimes, and so it's hard to. You learn that lesson sometimes. I mean, we've got our own stories where God kind of says, "Hey, I'm in charge."
Yeah. Hello, McFly. Hello. The last couple of years, Cam, our battle cry, my battle cry maybe, that they couldn't escape from me, is I would just walk around Malachi 3:10. I'm not going to tell you now. I'll let everybody go look it up. Malachi 3:10. That's what has been the strength of the YMCA of Greater Richmond, and I believe can be the strength of the YMCA movement. But we have to go there.
Yeah. Well, share, what's your hope? And you're speaking to the movement now. What's your hope for the movement going forward?
I believe I love history. And as many of my staff and my kids tell me, the reason is because I've lived through most of it. So one of, I think, the beauties of the history of the movement is it has breathed with the needs of society. So as things change, the whys change. Leadership comes and goes. Nobody owns it. It is owned by the community if we do it well. We give it away every single day, so to speak. So I'm hoping in the future, we continue to breathe. We continue to be elastic. We adapt. There's a lot of innovation and adapting going on right now in the movement, which is good. We're not going to be the same. We don't need to be the same. We need to continue to figure out this new reality of how we serve. Some things will be there, but we have shown the strength of who we are in this last year all across this nation and how we've served. Hopefully we'll stay there. But in all that, we need to be cognizant of the fact of the foundations of the Christian principles that have built and sustained the YMCA. We talk about the mission to put Christian principles into practice through programs, right? And so many times when I was teaching PMP or in other groups, I said, so tell me, what are the Christian principles? And people go, oh, respect, responsibility, honesty, caring. I said, no, those are values. Those aren't principles. Values change. What are our principles? Let's get into a national dialogue of our principles. And if I could offer up what God has just told me, there's a lot of principles of Christianity, but from a YMCA standpoint, the one principle that we had at Richmond is we prayed. We prayed before all board meetings. We prayed before all athletes, all sports games. We had the athletes' prayer. We had our camp blessing, all of our campers saying the blessing. And in that was another principle. And the principle was acknowledging God. there is a God. We pray to him. There's a God. The second principle that we had is everybody, and I said it to you earlier before we came on, and then I reiterated again, is just that we are all created in God's image, worthy, fearfully, magnificently made, no junk, of dignity and respect. Can you imagine, Cam, what would happen if every person and child that came into our Ys, into our programs, into our pools, into our after schools, our summer camps, they knew without a shadow of doubt they were loved unconditionally because they are worthy of God's creation. They're respected and they're bestowed dignity. That's a principle. If we can live that principle, we can live in prayer, the communication pipeline to God. And if we can live in just, there is a God, start there. Just start there. That's, to me, that's the foundation that this movement was built on in all of its strengths and weaknesses that will carry us, that we are relevant, we are responsive to the community needs, and that we continue to just be there as we're needed and called upon. That would be my prayer and my hope. My Malachi 3:10.
Malachi 3:10. Well, TJ, on behalf of thousands of kids, families, staff, people throughout the movement that you've just impacted, I want to say thanks for a great career and just sharing yourself. And let me just close this with a word of prayer for you, if I could, for everybody. So
thank you, brother.
TJ, we just, and God, we're just thankful for giving us TJ and giving him the talents and the gifts and just inspiring so many people and leading the organizations he's been a part of. And so we just ask that you continue to lift him up and his leadership for whatever's next, and special blessings on his wife and his family as they move into the next stage of life. But again, we're just thankful and blessed that he's been in our life. And TJ, we pray for you. Amen.
And brother, you keep up the fight. Note that I'm praying for you and all those. I'm even praying for Sharon Padgett. I'm even praying for her. And I know she's going to watch this, and I know I'm going to hear from her. Right?
Let's hope. Let's hope. Hey, thanks for joining us, and we won't let you go far. We'll keep in touch.
6 months, baby. 6 months.
All right.
I'll see you soon, brother.
All right.